Hello candidates, and welcome to the Advanced Financial Management Learning session. The topic is mergers and acquisitions. In our today's lesson, we're going to discuss the regulatory framework for mergers and acquisitions. Regulatory framework for mergers and acquisitions. And in this lesson, we're going to highlight some of the regulatory bodies and legislation govern mergers and acquisitions in Kenya. And the regulatory framework for mergers and acquisitions in Kenya is designed to ensure fair competition and also to protect the interests of various stakeholders where companies choose to merge or when a company decides to acquire another one. That decision is likely to affect many stakeholders like the employees, the management, the shareholders, the investors, the members of the public, and so on. And therefore, it's important that these transactions are regulated. That's why we have regulatory bodies in Kenya that help in ensuring that the interests of the various stakeholders are protected. So the first regulatory body is the Competition Authority of Kenya. One, Competition Authority of Kenya. The Competition Authority of Kenya is the primary regulatory body that is responsible for overseeing mergers and acquisition activities in Kenya. And the mandate of the CAK is derived from the Competition Act. It is derived from the Competition Act. This is an act of parliament that stipulates that there ought to be a Competition Authority of Kenya, which has been put in place since the year 2010. It is the principal legislation governing mergers and acquisitions, right? The Competition Authority of Kenya. It is the principal governing body. And the role of the Competition Authority of Kenya is to prevent anti-competitive practices that may arise from mergers and acquisitions. Do you understand? That is the primary role of the CAK. Is to do what? Is to prevent anti-competitive practices that may arise during these transactions, the mergers and acquisition. The second body is the Market Authority. Capital Market Authority, CMA. CMA, the Capital Market Authority, regulates mergers and acquisitions involving companies that are listed on the Securities Exchange, companies that are listed on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. So if the companies that are listed on the Nairobi Securities Exchange choose to merge or to acquire or to take over other companies, the Capital Market Authority has to be involved. The CMA has developed regulations, what we call takeovers and mergers. That is Capital Market Takeovers and mergers regulations. These are regulations that guide the acquisitions and mergers involving companies that are listed on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. You understand? These regulations provide the framework for such activities. And the CMA ensures that there is transparency. The CMA also protects investor interests and so on, particularly the interests of the companies that are listed on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. You understand? So the Capital Market Authority, through the takeovers and mergers regulations, ensures that there is transparency, ensures that the interests of the public, the interests of the various stakeholders are protected. So this is the second body, the Capital Market Authority. The third body is the Central Bank of Kenya. The Central Bank of Kenya regulates mergers and acquisitions in the banking and the financial services sector. Banking, and financial services sector. Mergers and acquisitions that occur in the banking and financial services sector are regulated by the Central Bank of Kenya. And the Banking Act also requires that financial institutions should obtain the central bank approval for mergers and acquisitions. So we have again here the Banking Act as another piece of legislation that guide mergers and acquisitions in the banking and financial services sector. So the companies that operate in the banking and financial services sector that would wish to merge or to engage in acquisition activities, they must seek approval from the Central Bank of Kenya. The Central Bank of Kenya. Number 4, we are currently discussing the various bodies that regulate mergers and acquisitions. And the third one here is the Communications Authority of Kenya. Communications Authority of Kenya. Communications Authority of Kenya regulates mergers and acquisitions of companies within the communication sector. Within the communication sector. The fifth body is the Insurance Regulatory Authority. Insurance Regulatory Authority. Insurance Regulatory Authority, the IRA, regulates mergers and acquisitions of companies within the insurance sector. I can go on and mention such bodies and mention other acts of parliament like the Companies Act, the Companies Act, the Companies Act of 2015 provides the general regulations. They provide what we call general regulations for companies within Kenya, and it impacts how mergers and acquisitions are carried out. How mergers and acquisitions are carried out. You understand, candidates? Regulatory framework for mergers and acquisitions in Kenya. These are 5 bodies and the Companies Act. And in this lesson, we've learned that the regulatory framework for mergers and acquisitions is designed to ensure fair competition. It's also designed to protect the interests of various stakeholders, like the Competition Authority of Kenya. We've said this is the principal body. The Competition Authority of Kenya is the primary regulatory body that is responsible for overseeing mergers and acquisitions. And we mentioned that its mandate is derived from the Competition Act, which is the principal legislation governing competition and mergers and acquisitions. We've stated here again that the Competition Authority of Kenya, the role of this authority is to prevent anti-competitive practices that may arise from mergers and acquisitions. So this is the principal body, principal legislation. This is the principal body, and the principal legislation is the Competition Act. The second body is the Capital Markets Authority. The Capital Markets Authority, we've said, regulates mergers and acquisitions of companies that are listed on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. And the Capital Markets Authority has developed regulations that are referred to as the Capital Market Takeovers and Mergers. Takeovers and mergers. Takeovers and mergers, which provide the framework for mergers and acquisition transactions. Number 3 is the Central Bank of Kenya. We've said regulates mergers and acquisitions in the banking and financial services sector. And we've stated that the Banking Act, which is an act of parliament in Kenya, the Banking Act requires financial institutions to seek approval from the central bank. Okay? Requires that companies within the banking and financial sector seek approval from the Central Bank of Kenya before merging. The number 4, we have the Communications Authority of Kenya, which regulates mergers and acquisitions in the communication sector. We've gone ahead to identify also the Insurance Regulatory Authority of Kenya, which you've said regulates mergers and acquisitions of companies within the insurance sector. So that marks the end of the lesson, where we've discussed briefly the regulatory framework for mergers and acquisitions in Kenya. Here is today's assignment. Number 1, what are the key objectives of anti-competitive regulations in the context of mergers and acquisitions? And how do these regulations aim to protect market competition? Number 2, how do cross-border mergers and acquisitions create complexities in regulatory compliance, and what international frameworks exist to address these challenges? I repeat, how do cross-border mergers and acquisitions create complexities in regulatory compliance? Number 3, how does the regulatory framework regarding disclosure requirements impact the transparency and fairness of the mergers and acquisitions process? Thank you for attending the lesson. We'll meet in the next lesson, where we continue to share knowledge in advanced financial management. Bye-bye.